Arrived 20 minutes early. That was the first mistake. Or maybe it wasn't a mistake at all. Maybe it was just who I am. The kind of person who shows up early to things, who irons the tablecloth before guests arrive, who double-checks the reservation the morning of. The hostess at Marlowe's led me to the table I'd booked 3 weeks in advance, a corner booth near the window that looked out onto the street, and I remember thinking the lighting was perfect, soft and golden. The kind of light that makes everything look like it means something. I sat down and smoothed the front of my dress, black wrap dress, the one my friend Tabitha always said made me look like I had my life together. I'd straightened my hair, put on the earrings my grandmother left me. I wanted to look like someone worth celebrating. The breadbasket arrived. I told the server I'd wait. Outside, the November sky over Portland had gone that deep blue-gray it gets just before the streetlights come on. That narrow window where everything looks suspended. I watched a couple walk by sharing an umbrella. A man jogging with a dog that kept stopping to sniff things. A woman with a paper bag of groceries balanced against her hip. I was 31 years old that evening. That's not old, I know that. But 31 felt like a turning point in a way I couldn't quite explain. Like I'd been standing at a door for years and I was finally ready to walk through it. I wanted to mark it. I wanted my family around me when I did. My mother had confirmed. My stepfather had confirmed. My younger sister had said she'd try, which in her language meant yes. I ordered water with lemon and kept my phone face up on the table. 6:45, 6:50. 7. I moved the breadbasket to one side so it would be easier to set the extra plates. The server came by and asked if I was ready to order, and I said, "Just 5 more minutes." And she smiled the way servers smile when they know. I didn't know yet. I was still in the part of the evening where I believed. 7:15. The restaurant had filled up around me. A birthday party at the long table in the back was getting loud in the good way, balloons tied to every chair, someone's grandmother being handed a cake with too many candles. I watched her face when they lit them and felt something tighten in my chest. My phone buzzed. I assumed it was one of them saying they were parking or stuck at a light or... Sorry, 5 more minutes? I picked it up. It was a group text, the family group chat, the one my stepfather had created years ago that my sister had renamed the fam quote, and that I had spent years muting and unmuting depending on how much I could handle. My stepfather had sent a photo. It was a picture of the couch, the television in the background, some football game, my mother's feet and fuzzy socks on the coffee table, my sister's handwriting on a pizza box, pepperoni, no mushrooms, cozy, warm, together. Below the photo, my stepfather had written, "Rain's too bad. We're staying in. Hope your dinner is good." That was it. No sorry, no happy birthday, no we'll make it up to you, just hope your dinner is good. I read it 3 times. Then I set the phone face down on the table. The server came back and I ordered a glass of wine and the salmon, and I told her there would only be one of me tonight after all. She didn't say anything unnecessary, which I was grateful for, just took the extra menus and said she'd be right back with the wine. I sat with it, the sound of other people's evenings happening all around me, silverware on plates, someone laughing at the bar, the birthday grandmother blowing out her candles and everyone at that table erupting into applause. I didn't cry. I thought about it. I considered it as an option, the way you consider whether to call someone when you already know they won't pick up. But I didn't. What I felt was quieter than sadness and louder than nothing. This dull, heavy recognition. Like I had finally seen something clearly that I'd been squinting at for years. Here's what they didn't know that night. I had been paying my mother's car insurance for 2 years. Not because she asked, exactly. Because one afternoon she'd mentioned, very casually, very offhandedly, the way she mentioned most things she needed, that the payment was coming up and things were tight. And I'd said I'd cover it. Because I always said I'd cover it. Because somewhere along the way I had learned that covering things was how I stayed connected to them. Money was the thread. I pulled it, and they came closer. Or so I believed. The car insurance was $412 every 6 months. I had set up an autopay. I had never mentioned it again. I had not expected a thank you every time, but I had expected, I don't know, something. some baseline acknowledgement that I existed in their lives as more than an autopay. I ate my salmon, I drank my wine, I watched the rain hit the window, and then I got out a pen from my purse. I still carry a real pen, one of those things about me my sister finds inexplicably strange. And I took the small note card the restaurant used for reservations, the one they'd left at the table with my name on it, and I flipped it over, and I wrote on the back, "I've been paying your car insurance for 2 years. I paid it because I thought it meant I mattered to you. Tonight, I understand it doesn't. I won't be paying it anymore. Happy birthday to me." I didn't sign it. There was only one person it could be from. I left it on the table, under the salt shaker so it wouldn't slide. I left cash for the check, more than enough, and I put on my coat and I walked out into the Portland rain. I want to tell you about my family, because nothing that happened that night makes sense without it. My parents divorced when I was 7. My mother remarried within 2 years, quickly, the way people remarry when they've already emotionally left long before they legally did. My stepfather, Conrad, was not a bad man. He was a particular kind of man, the kind who is perfectly pleasant as long as nothing is asked of him. He liked football and mild weather and restaurants where he already knew what he was going to order. He had no cruelty in him, only a profound absence of interest in anything that didn't directly affect him. My mother became, over the years, a version of herself I don't think she intended. She took his shape. She learned to care about what he cared about. She stopped calling to check in on me the way she had when I was small. Those rambling Tuesday night calls where she'd tell me about her garden and ask about my friends and say, "I love you, baby," before hanging up. That mother still existed somewhere in my memory, vivid as a photograph, but she had become harder to reach. My sister, my half-sister, technically, though I'd never used the word, was 6 years younger than me. She was the one both of us orbited around. My mother's face changed when she walked into a room. Even Conrad smiled differently at her, looser, warmer, real. She wasn't spoiled exactly. She was simply loved with the kind of fullness and attention that leaves marks, and I was loved with the kind that doesn't. I'd understood this for years. I had not allowed myself to be bitter about it, or tried not to, which is different from succeeding. I had kept showing up. Birthday dinners, Christmases, the hospital when Conrad had his knee surgery, the weekend I drove 4 hours to help my mother move into the new house. The house with the room Conrad called the guest room. But that had always been referred to in conversations I wasn't supposed to overhear as Leah's room. My sister's room. I don't have a room in that house. I'd driven 4 hours anyway. I'd carried boxes. I'd assembled furniture and made sandwiches and told my mother the living room looked beautiful. I'd driven home that Sunday night through dark rain, not so different from the rain that November. And I had told myself it was enough. Being useful was enough. Showing up was enough. The car insurance had started around that time. Coincidence maybe, or maybe not. I got home around 9. I had a cat by then. I'd adopted her 6 months earlier, a gray tabby named Rosemary, and she'd been the best decision I'd made in years. She was waiting on the other side of the door in the way she had, like she'd known I was coming, like she'd simply arranged herself there because she believed in me. I sat on the floor of my entryway and let her climb into my lap, and I stayed there for a long time. The rain was still going. The apartment was quiet. I had a bottle of Prosecco in the fridge that I'd bought for after dinner, thinking maybe I'd bring some of it to the table. Thinking maybe we'd toast. I went and got it, opened it alone, poured it into one of the good glasses, the ones I never use because I'm always saving them for occasions. Here's the thing nobody tells you about the moment things change. It doesn't feel like a storm. It doesn't feel dramatic. It feels like something settling, like furniture finally placed where it was always supposed to go. I wasn't angry that night. I was clear. The group chat stayed quiet until around 11, when my sister sent a gif of a birthday cake. One of those automated-looking ones, the kind you'd send to a coworker you barely know. No message, just the gif. I didn't respond. My mother texted me separately about an hour after midnight. She'd been asleep, she said. Had the phone on, do not disturb. I'm sorry we missed dinner, sweetie. Rain was just so bad. How was it? I looked at that message for a long time. How was it? As if it had been a thing I'd done on my own that they might be curious about. A movie I'd seen. A class I'd taken. I typed and deleted several responses. Then I put the phone on the nightstand and turned off the light. The autopay was through my bank, not through my mother's account. It had been set up so she didn't have to do anything, so she'd never even have to think about it. I'd done it that way on purpose, I realize now. So I'd never have to ask for gratitude, so I could pretend I didn't need any. The following Monday morning, I sat at my desk at work, a mug of coffee going cold beside me, and I logged into my bank account. I found the payment. I clicked into it. My mouse hovered over the cancel button for maybe 4 seconds. I clicked it. There was a confirmation screen. Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring payment? Yes, this action cannot be undone. That's fine. Payment will not be processed on the next scheduled date. I closed the window. I remember the exact feeling of that moment. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't vindictive. It was more like setting down something I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it wasn't attached to me. I went back to work. I answered my emails. I ate lunch at my desk. I did not tell anyone what I had done. The payment had been due on December 3rd. On December 4th, my phone rang at 7:48 in the morning. My mother. I was in the shower and missed it. She called again at 8:02. Then 8:15. Then a text, did you forget the car insurance? It didn't go through. I got to work. Put my phone in my bag. At 9:30 she called again. At 9:47 Conrad called, which he had done maybe twice before in my entire life. At 10,000 my sister texted, hey mom is freaking out, did something happen with the insurance? I counted later that day. Between 7:48 a.m. on December 4th and when I finally responded at 2 p.m., 23 calls, 11 texts. I thought about that night at Marlowe's, the empty chairs, the bread basket, the photo of the couch and the fuzzy socks and the pizza box. Rain's too bad. We're staying in. Hope your dinner is good. I typed my response carefully. I'd been composing it in pieces since that night on the floor with Rosemary and the Prosecco. I've been covering that payment for 2 years. I canceled it. I should have set a clearer boundary from the beginning. That's on me. But I also need you to understand why I'm not continuing. I sat alone at my birthday dinner for an hour and a half waiting for you. I got a picture of the couch. I think we have different understandings of what I mean to this family, and I'm not willing to keep paying for a version of belonging that doesn't actually exist. I love you. I hope you get the insurance sorted out. I put the phone back in my bag. The responses came quickly and in waves, the way responses do when people are scared. My mother, that's not fair. The weather was genuinely bad. Conrad, this is a very dramatic reaction. My sister, to my surprise, said nothing for several hours. When she finally texted, she said, I didn't know you felt this way. I believed her. That might have been the saddest part. I want to be honest with you because I think that's the only reason to tell a story like this. I did not handle all of it perfectly. In the weeks that followed, there were conversations that went sideways. A phone call with my mother that started measured and ended with both of us crying. A text thread with my sister that I left unread for longer than was kind. I said some things that were true but landed harder than I meant them to. I said some things I still stand behind completely. What I didn't do, go back. Not to the insurance. Not to the performance of not minding that I've been giving for years. Not to the version of myself who showed up to carry boxes and make sandwiches and drive 4 hours and say the living room looked beautiful when what I was really doing was paying a toll to exist in their peripheral vision. My mother and I have a different relationship now. Smaller in some ways, more honest in others. She got the car insurance figured out. Conrad has a cousin who works in insurance. Some arrangement was made. I don't know the details and I haven't asked. What I know is that my mother calls me on Tuesdays sometimes now, for no reason, just to talk. The first time she did it, I stood in my kitchen and didn't know what to say for a moment because I hadn't expected it. She called to tell me about her garden. Some new variety of hydrangea she was trying. She asked about my job, my friends, whether I was sleeping okay. She said, before she hung up, I should have been there. I know that. I'm sorry. It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't a speech. It was just the truth, delivered quietly a month and a half late. But I took it. My sister and I have been texting more. Real things, not just gifts. She came to visit in February, just her, and we walked around the city for a whole Saturday and ate dumplings. And she told me things about her own life I hadn't known. The loneliness of being the favored one, which I'd never thought to consider. The specific weight of being the one everyone expects to be fine. We talked for 3 hours over tea and I thought, we could have been doing this all along. That's the grief of it. That's the thing that stays. Rosemary is asleep on the windowsill right now as I write this. She has no idea what my family dynamics are, what I went through, what I changed. She is simply here, in the way she always is, settled and warm and certain that the windowsill belongs to her. I've started using the good glasses, not just for occasions. On a Tuesday with leftover pasta and nothing particularly noteworthy happening, because I'm here, and that's enough, and I spent too many years saving the good things for moments that other people had to validate. The birthday dinner, the empty chairs, the note under the salt shaker. I used to think about that night as the worst of it, the low point, the thing that broke something. But that's not right. It was the thing that finally let me be honest, with them and with myself, about what I'd been doing, and why, and what it was costing me. About the difference between loving people and paying rent on a relationship that doesn't quite let you in. I am 31 years old, and I walked home in the rain on my birthday, and I canceled an autopay, and I sat on my kitchen floor with a cat and a glass of Prosecco. And I cannot fully explain to you how free I felt. Not immediately. It takes longer than a night. But it built. The way spring builds without announcement, until one morning you realize the light is different and something somewhere has quietly reopened. I didn't need them to understand that night. I didn't need an apology to arrive on a specific schedule or conversation to go a particular way. I just needed to stop pretending that I was fine with being an afterthought. And once I stopped pretending, everything else became possible. Even the Tuesday calls, even the dumpling afternoon, even my sister saying quietly over her second cup of tea, "I think I didn't see how hard things were for you. I think I chose not to." Even that. I've been thinking a lot about why I kept paying that insurance for 2 years without saying a word about it. It wasn't because I had extra money. It wasn't because my mother asked me directly in a way I felt I couldn't say no to. It was because I believed, somewhere underneath all of it, that love had to be earned through usefulness. That if I made myself indispensable enough, if I covered enough bills, drove enough hours, assembled enough furniture and said the living room looked beautiful, eventually I would become someone they couldn't afford to overlook. That's not love. That's a transaction I invented and then pretended was mutual. The thing about that kind of arrangement is that it only works if the other person knows they're in it. My mother didn't know she was supposed to be paying me back in presents. Conrad didn't know I was keeping score in a ledger I'd never shown anyone. My sister didn't know any of it really. She told me as much over dumplings in February, and I believed her. They were living their lives. I was living a negotiation entirely in my own head, and then feeling betrayed when they didn't honor terms they'd never agreed to. That realization didn't make the birthday dinner hurt less. It still hurt. 23 calls the next morning didn't come because they suddenly understood what they'd done. They came because the autopay didn't go through. That distinction matters. I'm not going to pretend the clarity came without grief. But here's what I've come to understand. Slowly, in the months since, the grief was appropriate. I was grieving something real. Not the relationship I had, but the one I'd been building in my imagination while the real one sat neglected. That imaginary relationship was worth mourning, and then was letting go. What I did that night at Marlowe's and in the days after wasn't revenge in the way people use that word. It was just accuracy. I stopped doing something that was costing me and giving me nothing back. I told the truth in writing, quietly, under a salt shaker, and then I walked home in the rain. That's not dramatic, that's just honest. The courage part. And I think it does take a kind of courage. Wasn't in canceling the payment. It was in deciding I was worth honesty, that I didn't have to keep subsidizing relationships that treated me as optional, that my presence at my own birthday dinner was worth showing up for, even alone, with good earrings and a glass of wine and everything. Rosemary was on the other side of the door when I got home. She still is. Every time. Animals have a particular genius for this. They don't require you to earn their company. They're just there. I've learned something from that, more than I expected to. My mother calls on Tuesdays now. My sister came to visit. Neither of those things happened because I forced them or because I made myself useful enough to deserve them. They happened because I stopped pretending, and that created, somehow, a small amount of space for something real. That's the only lesson I've got. Not a grand one. Just tell the truth, even when your hands are shaking. Stop paying for things that aren't being given back to you. Use the good glasses on a Tuesday. It's enough. You're enough. You're always the occasion.